So on the morning of May 2nd, approximately 10 a.m., our CMP officers received a call about two missing children in Lansdowne Station. The information at the time was that they wandered off away from the property, and I can tell you that our officers got at the scene very quickly, and we were monitoring the situation and hopefully finding the children very soon after.
Every morning, Lily's small feet would tap lightly against the classroom floor, her pink backpack, a beacon of childhood joy, bouncing with each step. Her smile was radiant, filled with the kind of innocence only a 6-year-old can hold, a reflection of hope and trust in a world she was only beginning to understand. Behind her, her little brother Jack followed quietly, clutching a crayon drawing he had carefully crafted for his teacher, his shy eyes wide with curiosity and wonder. These simple rituals, the morning walk, the cheerful greetings, the eager anticipation of a day filled with learning and laughter, were the foundation of their childhood. But one morning, something was different. Their seats sat empty, two small spaces void of the life and energy that had always filled the room. No tiny footsteps, no whispered giggles, no eager hands raised to answer question. The teacher marked them absent, assuming it was a simple day of illness or unforeseen family matters. She told herself they'd be back tomorrow, just like any other day. But tomorrow never came. The absence stretched on, growing heavier with each passing hour, each day, each week. In a world that promises protection and safety for its children, Lily and Jack vanished without a trace, swallowed by silence and shadow. It was a disappearance that sent shockwaves through the community. Friends, neighbors, and strangers alike were gripped by disbelief and dread. How could two young lives simply vanish, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions and aching hearts? How did the very hands meant to protect them, parents, guardians, teachers, authorities, miss the signs? Where was the safety net that should have caught them? The school, once a place of warmth and security, felt hollow and cold. Teachers who had once been greeted with bright smiles and shy hellos now sat in stunned silence, haunted by the echoes of what should have been. They replayed moments, searching for clues. Was there a moment of distress overlooked? A whispered fear unheard? A small cry for help that went unnoticed? The weight of guilt and helplessness pressed down on them, a crushing reminder of their failure to protect those entrusted to their care. As days turned to weeks, the void left by Lily and Jack's disappearance only grew. Parents clutched their own children tighter, haunted by the terrifying possibility that it could happen to any family, in any neighborhood. The community united in grief and fear, searching for answers that seemed just out of reach. The story of these two vanished children became more than just a mystery. It became a stark reflection of a broken system, of silent warnings ignored, of the fragility of childhood in a world too often unkind. In the hearts of those who knew them, and those who only hoped to find them, the question remained, what did we miss? And as that question echoed through empty classrooms and silent streets, it carried with it a plea for justice, for truth, for a chance to bring Lily and Jack home. Teachers see everything. The nervous glances exchanged between children, the bruises carefully hidden beneath long sleeves, the way a small child flinches at raised voices or sudden movements. Lily's teacher had watched her change over the weeks and months. Once lively and bright, she had become quieter, withdrawn, clutching a worn stuffed bunny during reading time, her eyes constantly scanning the classroom as if searching for escape. Jack, only 4 years old, often arrived with shoes on the wrong feet, his hair unbrushed and messy, and dark circles beneath his eyes betraying restless nights. When the dismissal bell rang, he sometimes broke into tears, holding tightly to his teacher's hand and begging not to go home, fearful what awaited him there. The school was one of the few places where they experienced kindness, safety, and warmth, but that sanctuary lasted only as long as the school day. Once they stepped out the doors, the protection vanished, swallowed by the shadows of their home life. When Lily and Jack missed school on May 2nd, the teacher initially thought it might be a simple illness or family emergency. But by the third day of no-shows, worry began to spread. Phone calls went unanswered, emails to the family remained ignored, and no one offered any explanation for their sudden disappearance. The school counselor officially logged their absences, flagging concern to authorities, but still no answers came. Behind the scenes, whispers and questions grew louder. Why hadn't anyone in the community noticed? How could two small children vanish without a trace? The school was left haunted by one terrible question. Had they missed the signs? The bruises hidden beneath sleeves, the fearful glances, the quiet desperation. Were these cries for help that went unheard? The classroom was meant to be a refuge, but for Lily and Jack, it had become a silent witness to the invisible pain they endured every day. And now, that pain had exploded into a nightmare no one could escape. By the end of that harrowing week, whispers began to spread quietly among the school staff and the children alike, soft, uneasy murmurs that tried to make sense of what was happening. Is Lily's family in trouble? What about those bruises on Jack's arms? These questions linger like shadows in the hallways, too delicate to be openly voiced, but impossible to ignore. The air was thick with worry and unspoken fear, the kind that settles deep into a community when the unthinkable begins to take shape. Then, the heartbreaking truth was confirmed. Lily and Jack Sullivan, two bright, innocent children, were missing. The images that flooded local news and television screens were hauntingly familiar. The same smiling faces from school folders, the snapshots the teachers had taken during happier days. They were frozen forever in time, moments of joy and innocence now overshadowed by despair. In the classroom, Lily's chair remained vacant, her pink backpack hanging untouched, swaying slightly as if waiting for her return. Jack's Spider-Man water bottle, once gripped tightly in his small hands, sat abandoned on the windowsill, a silent testament to the boy who once filled the space with boundless energy. The other children struggled to understand. They whispered questions to their teachers and to each other. When will Lily come back? Is Jack still sick? Their voices were tinged with confusion and hope, clinging desperately to answers that simply didn't exist. The art projects, half-finished and forgotten, lay scattered across the desks, as if frozen in the moment when everything changed. For the teachers, every morning became a ritual of silent longing. They found themselves staring at the classroom door, hoping to catch a glimpse of Lily's shy wave or hear Jack's cheerful chatter echoing down the hall. But instead, they were met with an overwhelming, suffocating silence, a silence so loud it filled every corner of the room and echoed through every heart. The absence of those two children was not just physical. It permeated the very soul of the school, a painful reminder of how fragile safety can be, and how devastating the loss when that safety is broken. Behind the silence, teachers and school staff began to quietly piece together a troubling mosaic of signs that had been overlooked or dismissed. Lily arrived at school with unexplained bruises on more than one occasion, and each time, those marks were attributed to innocent accidents. Falls during play, minor bumps, never raised enough alarm to spark a deeper investigation. Meanwhile, little Jack's behavior became increasingly anxious. He would flinch at sudden loud noises, and often kept his gaze fixed on the classroom door, as if expecting something or someone that made him uneasy. His teacher noticed how he struggled to concentrate, sometimes forgetting to eat his lunch or clutching his favorite Spider-Man water bottle tightly for comfort. Concerned educators documented these observations diligently, submitting reports and concerns to the school administration and child welfare authorities. Child Protective Services made a handful of visits to the Sullivan home, conducting interviews and assessments, but despite these efforts, the conditions that endangered the children remained unchanged. Lily confided to her teacher once that she wished she could stay at school forever, escaping a world that felt unsafe. Jack, too, would quietly ask for extra snacks to bring home, small gestures revealing unmet needs. Though these signs were shared up the chain of social workers, counselors, and school officials, the system failed to act decisively and promptly. Weeks passed, and the children's attendance waned until, finally, they stopped coming altogether. Their absences were entered in official records as unexcused, a sterile term that belied the growing storm behind the scenes. In those classrooms where they once laughed and learned, empty seats now held the weight of unanswered questions and missed chances, silent testimonies to a heartbreaking failure of protection. The teacher called home repeatedly, leaving messages that went unanswered, each silence weighing heavier than the last. At recess, hushed conversations swirled through the playground and classrooms. Rumors of a troubled family struggling beneath the surface, whispered accounts of CPS visits that brought no visible change, and quiet observations of bruises that shouldn't have been there on Lily's arms and legs. Jack, once bright-eyed and playful, now arrived at school weary and hungry, sometimes wearing clothes that didn't quite fit, his small hands trembling as he clung to his backpack. Driven by concern and a growing sense of urgency, the teacher meticulously documented every incident. Each bruise, every anxious glance, all the subtle signs of fear hidden behind forced smiles. These records were passed along to school administrators and social workers, yet action seemed slow. Caught in the gears of bureaucracy, weeks stretched on with no visible intervention, no protective hand stepping in to shield the children from harm. The community's frustration grew, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Parents whispered in worried tones, some blaming the family for their silence, others directing ire at the systems meant to protect their children. Questions hung in the air. How could warnings go unnoticed? Why did it take so long for anyone to act? The teacher's nights became restless, haunted by memories of Lily clutching her stuffed bunny tightly or Jack flinching at sudden noises, wondering if more could have been done. Each morning, the classroom felt emptier without their laughter and footsteps. The teacher found herself staring at their empty desks, their belongings still in place, reminders of innocence lost. Outside the school, parents and neighbors gathered, voices growing louder with demands for answers and accountability. The pain was palpable, a shared grief mixed with anger at a system that failed two little souls whose cries for help were missed until it was too late. Investigators arrived in full force, systematically questioning teachers, counselors, and school staff about every detail they could recall regarding Lily and Jack's attendance, behavior, and physical condition. The teacher's hands trembled as she carefully handed over her meticulous notes, records of Lily's increasing withdrawal, Jack's frequent flinching at raised voices, the unexplained bruises Lily wore like hidden scars, and the tattered, often ill-fitting clothes the children came to school in. Police officers took in every word, nodding and scribbling down details, but beneath their professional exterior was a growing uneasy. The teacher felt a crushing weight of guilt. How had these warning signs been overlooked or dismissed? How many chances had been missed to intervene before it was too late? As news of the investigation spread, the grief-stricken community's sorrow transformed into boiling anger. Parents, neighbors, and activists demanded answers from those entrusted with protecting their most vulnerable. At an emotionally charged town hall meeting, voices cracked with pain and outrage as families confronted teachers, social workers, and government officials. Why were the bruises ignored? Why did CPS visits fail to change anything? How could two children vanish with so many red flags raised? The questions hung heavy in the room, met with uneasy silence or vague reassurances. People who once trusted the system now questioned its very foundation. The community wasn't just seeking justice for Lily and Jack. They were demanding accountability, transparency, and urgent reform to prevent another tragedy from slipping through the cracks. Investigators arrived in force, methodically questioning teachers, school counselors, and staff about every detail: attendance records, visible bruises, changes in behavior, and any unusual incidents. The teacher's hands trembled as she handed over carefully kept notes. Detailed observations of Lily's growing withdrawal, Jack's constant flinching at loud noises, their worn and often dirty clothing, and moments when Lily clung tightly to a stuffed animal for comfort. Each page was a silent testimony to the struggles the children faced, struggles that had gone unnoticed or unacted upon for far too long. The police took in every detail, nodding thoughtfully, yet the weight in the teacher's chest only grew heavier with each passing moment. She knew deep down that if someone had listened sooner, if the signs had been taken seriously and acted upon swiftly, perhaps Lily and Jack would still be safe and here today. But now, the community's grief was giving way to raw, burning anger. Neighbors, parents, and friends gathered, their voices rising in frustration and disbelief. They demanded answers. Why had no one intervened? Why had multiple red flags been ignored or dismissed? Who was responsible for the system's failure to protect two innocent children? The tension spilled over into a packed town hall meeting where emotions ran high. Parents, some with tears streaming down their faces, confronted educators and child welfare officials, pressing for accountability. Questions hung heavily in the air. How could signs of neglect and possible abuse go unnoticed? Why had Child Protective Services visits yielded no meaningful change? How could a community watch silently as these children suffered? The room was filled with a mixture of sorrow, anger, and desperation. As voices echoed and stories were shared, the painful truth became clear. The system had failed Lily and Jack, and until that failure was acknowledged and addressed, healing would remain out of reach.